Sign right here, Mom. It's just routine. Her son whispered, pressing the pen into her trembling hand. Her daughter smiled too widely, blocking the bank teller's view, while the blind mother's fingers brushed against the lavender handkerchief she carried like a shield. The bank lobby went still, phones tilting up, whispers growing. Why so many pages for a simple update? The teller's voice cut through the quiet. Transfer of inheritance rights. 320 million. Gasps erupted everywhere. Her children froze, eyes darting nervously, while the mother sat up straighter, her blind eyes unseeing but steady. She hadn't signed yet. The whole room waited for her next move. You can sign right here, the son said, tapping the page like a metronome. The sound echoed. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. The bank smelled of printer ink and cold air. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. People shifted uncomfortably, phones in hand, pretending not to stare. The mother, Mrs. Evelyn Vance, looked small and careful. One palm rested on her cane, the other smoothed the fabric of her cardigan. Her eyes were cloudy but alert. A folded lavender handkerchief rested in her pocket, perfectly ironed. She breathed slowly, as if tasting the air in the room. "Where are we sitting?" she asked, her voice firm. "Right here, Mom," the daughter Sarah replied, her voice bright and almost sickly sweet. She pulled out the chair, guided her down, and aligned the pen with practiced gentleness. The son, Michael, placed a thick stack of documents on the counter, crisp spines, rustling pages. When he smiled, his jaw was tight. "It's routine," he said again. An employee at a distant station looked up at them. Customers leaned against the velvet ropes, doing that casual shuffle people do when they want a better angle without getting caught staring. Someone whispered, "She can't see the line she's signing." Another voice, a bit cruel, muttered, "Maybe they're just helping her." Evelyn listened to the sound the papers made. That weight didn't sound like routine. Her thumb traced the raised seam of her handkerchief. An anchoring habit. She adjusted her cardigan again. A small stutter of a breath lifted her shoulders, then fell. "What is the form?" she asked. Sarah laughed too quickly. "Account update. You know how banks are." She slid the pen between her mother's fingers. "Just a signature." Michael positioned himself between his mother and the teller, casting a shadow over the page. He tapped again. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Sweat glistened on his forehead. "We have another appointment," he said. "Traffic later will be crazy." The teller on duty, a man named David with tired eyes and a patient mouth, paused mid-stamp. He watched Sarah press closer, blocking Evelyn's left side. He saw Michael's foot bouncing. He saw the document header in a flash when Sarah shifted her body. He didn't like what the font suggested. Title blocks that only appear on legal transfers. His thumb hovered over the green button. He didn't press it yet. Evelyn lifted the pen. Her hand shook, then steadied. She found the edge of the paper with her fingertips like a map. "Read me the line," she said. "It's the consent line," Michael replied. "Just sign." Sarah tucked a curl behind her mother's ear, a gesture too rehearsed. "We already went over this at home, remember?" she said. Evelyn didn't remember. What she did remember was the last time someone rushed her. Hospital papers, years ago, when her husband was sick and a cousin tried to sell land she never agreed to sell. Back then, she had signed too quickly and paid for it. That memory sat heavy in her chest. She pressed the fabric of her handkerchief, felt its softness, then placed it next to the pen like a small flag. The customers shifted. A man turned on his camera. Another muttered, "Why the rush?" A woman replied, "Maybe the rate window is closing." It sounded weak. Nobody believed it. Michael narrowed his eyes. "Please, Mom." David cleared his throat unintentionally. The sound made Sarah flinch. Evelyn's blind gaze lifted toward him, head tilting. She smiled slightly, as if greeting a breeze. "Young man," she said, addressing the space where his voice lived. "What does the bold line say?" David hesitated. He looked at the children, looked at the room, phones angled up, and saw Michael's fingers drumming. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. "It's routine," Sarah repeated, her voice tense. Evelyn put the pen down. The click was soft, but final. She adjusted the cuff of her sweater, picked up the handkerchief, and folded it again. "Then there's no problem," she said softly, with a stranger reading it out loud. A ripple moved through the lobby. Michael tried to laugh. Sarah tried to smile wider. David took a slow breath as if stepping onto thin ice. He reached for the top page with careful fingers. Evelyn rested her palm on the lavender square. Her cane stood against the counter like a witness, and the bank went quiet enough to hear the paper lift. Michael leaned so close his breath fogged the glossy page. "Mom, just your name," he said. Velvet voice over gravel. His finger tapped the signature line again. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. The rhythm hooked into the room like a ringtone you couldn't ignore. Evelyn held the pen but didn't lower it. She turned her face toward the hum of the overhead lights, as if sight could reach through sound. Her left thumb rubbed the corner of the handkerchief until the fabric grew warm. She steadied her shoulders. Small inhale. Longer exhale. The tiniest nod to herself. Sarah pasted on a smile that was tight at the edges. She adjusted Evelyn's chair a few inches, sliding her body between the teller's view and the document. "Bank policy is strict," she sang. "We don't want any more delays." Her laugh landed half a pitch too high. At the next station, a printer coughed and jammed. The beep cut through the lobby. An employee swore softly. A child dropped a coin, and it spun in a bright, ringing circle that wouldn't stop. The room had a pulse. Now people were leaning over the rope line like a tide. "Why are there so many pages?" Evelyn asked. She tilted her head toward the paper. "Routine never smells like fresh glue." Michael pinched the bridge of his nose, annoyed he forgot to air out the stack. "For compliance," he said. "It's all the same. Initial here. Done." He reached to guide her hand. The pen slipped. A tiny dot of ink stained the margin like a bruise. "Oops." Sarah laughed. "See? Shaky today. We should finish quickly." She lowered her voice to syrup. "You trust us, right?" The word trust floated over the counter and landed like a loaded suitcase. A man in line whispered, "If that were my mom, I'd slow down." A woman replied, "Maybe the rate window is closing." She didn't believe herself one bit. David's chair creaked. He had seen urgency before. He had seen it when addicts tried to cash forged checks. He had seen it when kids tried to sell a truck that wasn't theirs. He wiped his palm on his pants, looked at the header again, and felt the same cold behind his ribs. He pressed the intercom button without looking down. The little red light blinked, but he didn't speak. "Not yet." "Honey," Evelyn said, turning towards Sarah's perfume, citrus and nerves. "Tell me the bold line." "It's consent," Sarah said. "You know, consent to manage." "Manage for how long?" Evelyn asked. "While things are complicated," Michael said too quickly. "You said you don't like paperwork. We're helping." Evelyn let that settle. She reached for the cane and touched the smooth wood near the handle. Her fingers slowed. This cane had been her map for 2 years. It had never lied. She squared it again so it wouldn't fall. Sarah's smile faltered. "Mom, traffic will catch us if we wait. You hate traffic." "That's true," Evelyn murmured. "But a trap can look like a road." Michael's foot hammered the tile. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap tap. He lifted the top page, covering the title line with his wrist. The ink smudge shone. He slid the pen toward his mother again. Your hand over mine, he said. We'll do it together. Together, Evelyn repeated softly, as if tasting a word she once loved. David stood up. His chair groaned again. He adjusted his tie, then loosened it, then tightened it. He could feel eyes crawling up his back. He cleared his throat, and the sound expanded. Sarah flinched. Michael didn't move. Sir, David said, addressing Michael with formal politeness that couldn't hide the steel. I need to verify the nature of this document before any signature. It's routine, Michael said. He smiled, but his teeth showed. She doesn't need to read it. Policy requires clarity, David replied. He placed his hand near the pages without touching them yet, especially when a customer requests it. She didn't request it. Sarah snapped, and then realized she had just told the room they feared reading. Her cheeks flushed. A phone camera zoomed in. Bystanders tilted their heads the way birds do when they catch a flash in the grass. Evelyn turned toward David's voice. Young man, she said, calm as a slow drum. My eyes are tired. I would like to borrow yours. David's throat worked. He nodded before remembering she couldn't see. Of course, he said. Voice out loud. Now I can read the header. Michael placed his palm over the top line. He laughed like a buddy trying to keep a party light. No need for a scene, he said. She trusts us. A wave of murmuring moved through the lobby. Someone whispered, if it were clean, they'd let him read. Another replied, record this. Evelyn folded the lavender handkerchief into a neat square and placed it next to the pen. Deliberate, centered, exact. A small ritual, a stake in the ground. She straightened her cardigan collar, smoothed the front, and lifted her chin. Her hand hovered in the air, open. Please, she said to David. Lend me your voice. David reached out. Michael hesitated, then withdrew his hand an inch too late. David's fingers found the corner and slid the page free with the care of someone lifting a sleeping child. He breathed slow and steady. The lobby became thin and bright like a storm about to break. He looked at the title block. The letters sat there, heavy as stones. All right, he said. Eyes on Evelyn. Words measured. I'll start from the top. David's voice cut the air like a blade, soft but unmistakable. Transfer of inheritance rights. He paused, throat dry, eyes scanning the bold letters again to make sure he hadn't misread. In the amount of 320 million. The words dropped heavy in the room. A murmur rippled through the line. A man hissed under his breath. Did he just say 320 million? A woman clutched her purse tighter, whispering to her friend, That's not routine, that's theft. Sarah's smile collapsed, lips thinning to a hard line. She laughed too loud, like someone breaking glass with their own voice. He must be mistaken. Mom, don't worry. He's confused. Her hand darted for the papers, but David moved them out of reach. Evelyn turned her face toward her daughter's voice. Her expression was unreadable, serene and sharp at once. No, she said softly. I'm awake. David resumed reading. Voice louder now, deliberate. Every word like a nail hammered into wood. The more he read, the more grotesque it became. Complete authority. Total control. Permanent waiver. Every word exposed the betrayal they thought would stay hidden in legalese. Michael's face shone with sweat. Sarah's hand trembled on the counter. Around them, the audience was no longer background noise. They were jury, witness, archivist. Phones captured everything, and in the middle of it all, the blind mother sat still. lavender handkerchief folded in her lap, her cane at her side like a silent guardian. She breathed slow, steady. She couldn't see the paper. She didn't need to. The truth had been dragged into the daylight, and the daylight was unforgiving. David's voice didn't just echo, it cracked the silence wide open. Transfer of all rights, assets, and holdings totaling 320 million, irrevocable, permanent, and binding upon signature. The words seemed to float in the air, heavy as iron. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then the bank lobby erupted in a storm of gasps, murmurs, and whispers. Sharp ones. 320 million. They were going to rob her blind, someone blurted out. Literally blind. Another hissed. Phones tilted higher, capturing every angle, every tremor, every look. Sarah's mask of sweetness collapsed. Her voice sharpened, brittle and cutting. This is harassment. Mom, don't listen to him. He's twisting it. You raised us. You know we'd never. David's eyebrow twitched. He angled the document just enough so the security guard, now standing next to him, could see. The guard's jaw tightened. His hand brushed the radio on his shoulder. Michael's facade cracked. His foot hammered the tile like a panic drum. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. He leaned over his mother, his shadow blotting out the light from her face. Mom, stop this nonsense. Sign the paper now. It's for the family. You owe us. The word owe landed like a slap. A murmur of disgust rippled through the crowd. She doesn't owe them nothing. Ungrateful snakes. They're adopted, right? And this is how they repay her. Evelyn's fingers tightened on her handkerchief. The band didn't flinch, even though Michael's voice pressed down like a weight. Slowly, she turned her blind eyes toward the heat of his anger. Her tone was soft, but it cut sharper than any knife. I owe you life or money? Evelyn asked. Michael faltered. His jaw opened, but no sound came out. David cleared his throat and read the final line, each syllable a verdict. Upon execution, the undersigned affirms this decision is voluntary with full knowledge of consequences. Sarah lunged forward, snatching for the pen, but the security guard stepped in. Firm hand on the counter, voice low and solid. That's enough. Phones captured it all. Sarah's frantic reach, Michael's shaking jaw, the guard's towering stance. Bystanders whispered louder now, no longer hiding their judgment. A man muttered, "Will they go to jail for this?" Another added, "Shame of the century." Evelyn put the pen down gently, her fingers brushing the counter as if feeling the truth written there. She folded her handkerchief with deliberate care, every crease exact. Then she placed it square in front of her like a statement. I might not see, she said, her voice low but carrying across the lobby. But I am not blind. Sarah froze, caught between fury and shame. Michael opened his mouth, but the weight of the crowd silenced him. Dozens of eyes were on them, eyes that judged, recorded, remembered. Evelyn rose slowly, leaning on her cane. Every small movement seemed magnified. The scrape of the chair, the quiet sigh as she straightened her cardigan, the firm tap of her cane against the tile. She turned her cloudy eyes toward David's voice. Thank you, she said softly. David gave the smallest nod, throat tight. Just doing my job, ma'am. But it wasn't just a job anymore. It was justice. Justice unfolding in real time under bright lights in front of strangers turned witnesses. The children stood rigid, their plan exposed, their inheritance slipping through their fingers. Their own mother hadn't needed sight to see them for who they truly were, and now the whole world saw them too. The lobby had shifted from quiet curiosity to full-blown spectacle. Phones remained up, recording like history was unfolding. The adoptive children were frozen, their polished image stripped naked before strangers who now viewed them as nothing more than predators. Michael tried one last time. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a desperate whisper. "Mom, don't do this. You'll ruin us." Evelyn tilted her head, listening to the tremor in his tone. Her fingers found the lavender handkerchief once more, folding its corners with surgical precision. Then she lifted her chin and spoke so the whole lobby could hear. "I took you into my home when you had nothing, and still you tried to make me nothing. That isn't ruin. That is greed." A gasp swept through the bystanders. Someone muttered, "She said it plain." Another whispered, "Good for her." Sarah's face twisted, her voice high and cracked. "You can't say that. We're your children." Evelyn's cloudy eyes turned toward her. Children protect their mother. They don't strip her soul for cash. The silence that followed was unbearable. Michael shifted on his heels, looking for an escape. Sarah hugged her purse to her chest, eyes darting to the cameras recording every twitch of her guilt. Then the security guard stepped forward, his presence like a wall. "You two need to come with me," he said flatly. He pointed toward the side door. Michael started to protest, but the guard's look cut him off. The crowd parted, murmuring as the two were escorted out. Some bystanders shook their heads. Others whispered prayers under their breath. A woman in line simply said, "Justice." Evelyn sat back down, her cane resting against the counter, her lavender handkerchief a neat fold. Her hands were calm. She smoothed her sweater now and exhaled slowly. A release of weight carried for too long. David, still holding the damning document, looked at her with quiet respect. "Ma'am," he said softly, "your account stays safe. Nothing leaves here without your clear word." She nodded, her blind gaze steady as stone. "Thank you. You gave me what my eyes could not." In that moment, she was no longer the frail figure her children thought they could manipulate. She was the guardian of her own dignity, her own fortune, her own story. Around her, the whispers softened into silence. Phones lowered. The crowd understood they had witnessed betrayal exposed and justice delivered, not in a courtroom, but in a bank lobby, on the voice of a teller who dared to read out loud. Evelyn rose again, leaning on her cane, the lavender handkerchief tucked safely in her pocket. She turned toward the door with slow, measured steps, and though she couldn't see the light spilling through the glass, she walked toward it with the quiet power of someone who had just reclaimed everything. As she left, a single truth lingered in the air, sharp and unforgettable. She didn't need sight to see her children's greed, just the courage to let the truth be spoken.